The night was cold and the rain did not stop. Dark clouds covered the sky and the small village looked empty. Most people stayed inside their homes, hiding from the storm, but one traveler walked slowly down the muddy road, his coat heavy with water. He was tired, hungry, and ready to rest. As he passed a broken wall near an old storage shed, he felt something strange. A shadow moved, quick and silent, almost too fast to see. The traveler stopped, his hand on his pack, his eyes searching the dark. At first he thought it was a wild animal, maybe looking for shelter, but then he saw it clearly under the flash of lightning. It was a child, small and thin. The child's skin had a faint blue glow, almost like moonlight. His large eyes reflected fear and hunger. He looked weak, shaking as he reached toward the traveler's food bag. The traveler stood still, watching in silence. The child's hands trembled as he pulled a piece of bread. He looked around quickly, making sure no one saw him. Then he bit the bread, fast and desperate, but he did not eat more. Instead, he held the rest of the food tightly and turned to run. The traveler could have shouted, could have stopped him, but something inside held him back. Why would a child steal food on such a dangerous night? And why was his skin glowing like that? This was no normal child. The rain grew heavier, washing the footprints into the mud, but the child left behind a faint trail of glowing steps, strange and mysterious. The traveler's heart beat faster. Was this some kind of trick, or was the child in real danger? He looked at the path ahead. He knew he should ignore it, keep walking, find his own shelter. But curiosity pulled him. Something about the child's eyes, full of fear and sadness, would not leave his mind. He tightened his coat, pulled his hood low, and began to follow. The night felt darker the deeper he went. The glowing footprints led him off the main road, through broken fences, past silent homes, and finally toward the woods. The rain fell harder, the ground soft. Under his boots every sound seemed louder. The wind in the trees, the water dripping from branches, his own breath. But he kept moving. Once he thought he lost the trail. But another flash of lightning showed the footprints again, glowing faintly, like they wanted him to keep going. The traveler felt uneasy. What if this was a trap? What if others were waiting for him deeper in the forest? Still he followed. Finally, the footprints stopped near an old, broken cabin. The roof was falling apart, and the walls leaned to one side. A weak, flickering light came from inside. The traveler stood outside, the rain soaking him. He listened carefully. He heard coughing, deep and painful, then a soft voice, almost a whisper. The child's voice. The traveler stepped closer, his boots sinking into the mud. Through the broken window, he saw the child kneeling beside someone. The child placed the stolen bread into the hands of a weak figure. It was a woman, older, her skin the same pale blue as the boy's. Her face was thin, her body trembling, her breath heavy. The traveler understood at once. The food was not for the boy. It was for his mother. The traveler's chest grew tight. He stood in silence, watching the scene. And in that moment he realized the boy had not stolen out of greed. He had stolen out of love and desperation. The rain poured down harder. The traveler closed his eyes. He knew this night was only the beginning of something far greater. The traveler stayed outside the broken cabin, his body cold and wet from the endless rain. He should have turned back, left the strange child and his sick mother behind, but something inside him said no. This was not the end. This was only the start. The boy looked up suddenly, his glowing eyes sharp. He sensed something. The traveler stepped back into the shadows, holding his breath. For a moment he thought the child had seen him, but the boy only wiped the rain from his face, tucked the bread closer to his mother, and then rushed outside again. The traveler froze as the boy ran past him into the storm. Where was he going now? The child moved fast, his small feet splashing through puddles. Every few steps, his glowing footprints lit the ground. The traveler hesitated only a moment before following. The chase began. Through thick trees and dripping branches, over broken fences and muddy fields. The boy ran like he knew every hidden path, every safe corner. The traveler struggled to keep up, his boots heavy, his breath hard, but the glowing trail kept pulling him forward. Why was the child running again? Had he noticed the traveler's presence? Or was there something else, something more dangerous waiting deeper in the forest? The questions raced through the traveler's mind. The rain blurred his vision, but the light from the footprints never faded. The boy darted through an old orchard. The twisted trees stood like black skeletons under the storm. Branches reached out like claws, scratching the traveler's coat. A sudden noise made him stop. A growl, low and sharp, from somewhere ahead. The boy froze too. His glowing eyes turned wide with fear. Then he sprinted even faster, leaving the sound behind. The traveler followed, his heart pounding. He caught only a glimpse in the corner of his eye, something large moving between the trees, watching, hunting. The path narrowed, leading to a steep hill. The boy scrambled up quickly, his hands and feet working together. The traveler climbed after him, slipping on the wet ground, grabbing at roots to pull himself up. At the top, he looked around, gasping. The forest stretched far and dark, the rain still falling like endless sheets of glass. The boy paused at the edge of the hill. For a moment he looked back, his glowing eyes meeting the traveler's. There was no anger there, no threat, only fear. Then, without a sound, he turned and vanished into the deeper woods. The traveler followed again, his body aching, each step heavier than the last. But he could not stop. Not now, not when the mystery pulled him so strongly. Soon the boy slipped into a narrow tunnel between sharp rocks. The traveler squeezed through after him, his shoulders scraping against the stone. Inside, the air grew colder, the sound of rain fading. Behind, the glow of the boy's footprints lit the dark passage like dim lanterns. The traveler slowed his steps, careful. Silent, every sound echoed, the drop of water, the beat of his own heart. Then he heard it again, that deep growl, closer this time. It came from behind. Something was following both of them. The boy rushed. Ahead, his small body disappearing into another opening. The traveler hurried, nearly stumbling. At the end of the tunnel, he stepped out into a hidden clearing. There the boy stopped, his chest rising fast, his face pale. He looked back at the traveler, not with anger, not with fear, but with something like hope. Before the traveler could speak, the growl came again, louder, deeper, shaking the wet ground under their feet. The trees at the edge of the clearing moved. A shadow rose, tall and heavy, with glowing red eyes. The boy gasped, clutching the empty jar in his hands. The traveler knew in that moment, this chase was never about food. It was about survival. And now both of them stood in the center of something far more dangerous than hunger. The growl echoed through the clearing, low and heavy like thunder. The boy froze, his glowing eyes wide with terror. The traveler stood still, rain dripping from his hood, his hand tightening around the strap of his pack. He did not know what kind of creature hid in the shadows, but he could feel its power. It was hunting, and now both he and the boy were caught in its gaze. The boy turned suddenly, darting toward the far side of the clearing. There, half hidden by fallen branches, was a narrow path leading into deeper forest. Without thinking, the traveler ran after him. The ground shook as the shadow moved, a pair of red eyes glowed brighter, following them through the storm. Branches slapped against the traveler's arms. The rain blinded his vision. But he stayed, close to the boy, never letting the glowing footprints vanish from sight. The hidden path was thin and crooked, roots twisted from the ground like ropes. Every step was a struggle, yet the boy ran as if the path was part of him. The traveler understood then this was no random escape. The boy knew this path well. The growl came again, closer now. A heavy crash followed, like trees being pushed aside. The traveler's breath grew sharp, his boots slipping in the mud. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the boy did not. Look back, he only ran faster and faster until the forest itself seemed to blur. At last, the path opened into a strange hollow. The ground sank lower, hidden beneath a roof of tangled branches. Inside, the air was warmer, dry compared to the storm outside. The boy stopped here, crouching low, pressing a finger to his lips. His glowing eyes told the traveler to stay silent. The traveler crouched too, his back against a tree root. He listened, waiting. The sound of rain softened above them, replaced by the slow, heavy steps of the creature outside. Each step shook the earth. Each growl rolled through the air like stone breaking. The boy pressed closer to the traveler, his small hands clutching the edge of the man's coat. For the first time, the traveler felt the boy's fear as if it were his own. Minutes passed like hours. The creature moved around the hollow, sniffing the air. At one moment, its shadow covered the entrance. Its red eyes shone like burning coals, scanning the darkness. The traveler held his breath. If it looked inside, if it found them. But then, after a long silence, the footsteps grew fainter. The growls faded into the distance, swallowed by the storm. The boy finally let go, his shoulders trembling with relief. He sat down on the ground, clutching the empty jar to his chest. The traveler exhaled slowly, wiping water from his face. He had many questions. But for now, he said nothing. The boy looked fragile, exhausted, yet there was something strong in him too. Something that kept him moving even with danger so close. At last, the boy stood again. He pointed deeper into the hollow, where a faint tunnel of roots and stone curved downward. A hidden path within the hidden path. The traveler hesitated. But the boy's eyes told him there was no choice. If he wanted answers, if he wanted to know the truth, he had to follow. The traveler nodded. Together they stepped into the tunnel. The air grew colder, the walls damp. The sound of dripping water, echoing every step, felt like a journey deeper into another world. A place where light barely touched, where secrets waited in the dark. Behind them, the forest groaned under the storm. Ahead, the hidden path led them into silence. The traveler knew this was only the beginning. The danger outside was real, but the mystery inside might be greater. And as the boy walked ahead, the faint glow of his skin lighting the way, the traveler realized he was no longer chasing, he was being led. Led to something that could change everything. The tunnel was narrow and cold. Water dripped from the stone ceiling, falling with soft echoes. The boy moved quickly, his glowing, skin giving just enough light to see. The traveler followed close behind, his hand brushing the damp wall to steady himself. Each step carried him deeper, away from the storm above, away from the danger outside, but also closer to something unknown. The air grew heavy, carrying a strange smell. Not death, but sickness, like old air trapped too long. The traveler's chest tightened. He wondered what he would find at the end of this path. The boy never looked back, never spoke. He only clutched the empty jar tighter, as if it meant everything. Finally, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. The walls glistened with wet stone, and faint moss glowed green in the corners. In the center lay a thin blanket of fabric, worn and torn. On it rested a woman, her skin the same pale blue as the boy's. Her face was tired, her breathing shallow. Her hands shook as she reached weakly toward her son. The boy rushed to her side, kneeling quickly. He pressed the jar into her hands. Her weak fingers curled around it, though it was empty. She looked at the boy with tired love, whispering words the traveler did not understand. Her voice was soft, almost like wind fading through the trees. The traveler stood at the edge, silent. He had chased the boy through rain and danger, through fear and mystery. Now the truth stood before him. The boy had not stolen for himself. He had stolen for her. For his mother, who was sick, weak, and close to the edge of life. The traveler felt his chest grow heavy. Memories stirred, of hunger, of loneliness, of times when he too had nothing. He had chased the boy, thinking of theft, maybe even a trap, but now he saw only desperation. A son trying to save the one person he had left. The boy spoke quickly to his mother, his glowing eyes full of worry. She touched his face gently, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. Then her gaze shifted. She saw the traveler standing, there, half hidden in shadow. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The traveler did not move. He did not raise his hands in threat. He simply lowered his hood, letting the woman see his human face. Her eyes widened slightly, but there, Was no fear, only surprise, and something else, perhaps hope, perhaps a question. The boy stood, his small frame trembling. He spread his arms wide, standing between the traveler and his mother. His eyes glowed brighter, his jaw set. He was ready to defend her even if he had no strength left. The traveler raised one hand slowly, palm open. No words, only a sign of peace. The tension held for a moment. Then the boy's eyes softened. He lowered his arms, his breath shaking with exhaustion. The traveler stepped closer, his boots echoing softly on the stone floor. He reached into his pack, pulled out the last piece of bread he had, and placed it gently on the ground between them. Not as an offering of pity, but as a choice. The boy stared at it, then looked at his mother. Her weak smile widened, her tired eyes glistening. Slowly, she reached for the bread. The boy helped her lift it. Together, they shared it piece by piece. The traveler stood quietly watching in that moment. The storm outside, the growl of the creature, the fear of the chase, all of it faded. What remained was simple. A mother, a child, and a stranger, bound together not by words but by the quiet truth of survival. The traveler understood something then. This night was no accident. He had not simply followed a thief. He had been led here to witness, to choose, to understand, and deep inside he felt the beginning of something greater. The chamber was quiet. Only the soft sound of dripping water and the weak breath of the alien woman filled the air. The boy sat close to her side, his glowing hands holding her trembling fingers. The traveler stayed a few steps back, his eyes fixed on them both. His heart was heavy, his mind torn. He had food for himself, not much but enough for a few days. If he gave it away, he would starve. If he kept it, the woman and the boy would surely fade. The choice pressed against him like the weight of the stone walls. He looked at the boy again, the small alien child who had risked everything for his mother. Thin arms, shaking legs, eyes full of fear but also full of strength. The traveler thought of his own past, nights when hunger gnawed at him, times when he stole just to live one more day. He remembered the faces of those who looked at him with anger, with judgment, not with kindness. Now he stood in their place. What kind of man would he be? The woman coughed, sharp and painful. Her body curled weakly. The boy rushed to comfort her, whispering soft words. The traveler could not understand their language, but he understood the meaning. Love, desperate love. He knelt slowly, placing his pack on the ground. His hands hesitated, fingers tightening on the strap. Every instinct told him to keep it close, to survive first, but another voice whispered deeper inside him. A voice he had almost forgotten. The voice that said survival alone was not living. He opened the pack. The smell of bread and dried fruit escaped into the chamber. The boy's eyes widened, his glowing hands trembling as he stared. The woman turned her head weakly. Her gaze met the traveler's, silent and pleading. The traveler took out half of his food. Not all. He could not give all, not yet, but enough to matter, enough to save them for tonight. He placed it gently beside the boy. No words, no demands, only a gift. The boy froze, then slowly, carefully, he reached out. He picked up the bread, looking at the traveler as if to ask if it was real. The traveler gave a small nod. The boy's lips parted, his eyes shone brighter. He broke the bread into pieces and handed them to his mother. Her weak hands held it, her mouth slowly chewing. Her breathing eased just a little. Color touched her face again, faint but alive. The traveler felt relief, but also fear. He had made his choice. He had stepped into their struggle. Now he was no longer a stranger passing by. He was part of it, and with that came danger. What if the red-eyed creature returned? What if others hunted the boy and his mother? What if helping them pulled him into a fight he could not win? The traveler sat back, his mind burning with questions. He looked at the boy again. The child had stopped shaking. He sat tall now, his glowing eyes filled not just with fear, but with trust. Trust was dangerous. Trust meant responsibility, and responsibility meant sacrifice. The traveler closed his pack slowly. He knew he could walk away now. He could leave them, keep his remaining food, and survive. But his chest tightened at the thought because deep inside, he knew he would never forget the sight of the boy's trembling hands, the sound of the mother's weak cough, the look of fragile hope in their glowing eyes. The conflict burned inside him. Survival for one, or survival for three. Safety in, leaving or danger in staying. His decision was not yet spoken, but the moment was coming, and once made, there would be no turning back. The chamber was still. The woman lay resting with the little food she had been given. The boy sat beside her, his glowing hands folded tightly around hers. The traveler leaned against the cold wall, his hood pulled low. His thoughts clashed like storm winds in his mind. He could leave now, slip back through the tunnel, return to the road, and no one would stop him. No one would know. He would keep his food, keep his life, and walk away. But the faces of the boy and his mother held him in place. Every time he thought of leaving, he remembered the boy's glowing eyes that had looked at him with fear, then trust. That trust was heavy, heavier than any pack he had ever carried. The boy's breathing slowed, his small body leaning against the wall. Exhaustion pulled him into sleep. His head rested on his mother's arm, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The traveler watched them silently. Something stirred in him that he had not felt. In years, a memory of another child, himself years ago, hungry, cold, waiting for someone to care. No one had come then. Would he repeat that cruelty now? The traveler opened his pack once more. Inside were the last of his rations, a little bread, a little dried meat, a flask of water, enough to last him a few days, not enough to share and still feel safe. He stared at the food for a long time. Then he sighed. Slowly, he pulled it out and set it down beside the boy. The sound of bread on stone made the boy stir. He blinked, rubbed his glowing eyes, and looked at the traveler. The traveler said nothing. He only pushed the food forward, his hand steady, his eyes calm. The boy sat up, shocked. He looked from the food to the man, then back again. Finally, he whispered a word the traveler did not understand, but its meaning was clear. "Thank you." The boy broke the bread into pieces once more. He gave some to his mother, kept a small piece for himself. Then, to the traveler's surprise, he pushed a piece back toward him. It was small, but it was offered with both hands. The traveler stared at it, stunned. The boy was sharing, even after everything, even when he had almost nothing. The traveler felt a tightness in his chest. This was not weakness. This was strength. The kind of strength no weapon, no soldier, no army could ever match. The choice had already been made in his heart. Now he understood it. He would not leave them, not tonight, not until he was sure they had a chance to survive. He picked up the bread the boy offered and ate it slowly. It was dry, rough, but it carried more weight than any meal he had ever known. It was trust shared between them. A bond sealed in silence. The woman's breathing eased as she ate. Her hand reached weakly toward the traveler. Her touch was light, trembling, but full of gratitude. He bowed his head slightly, accepting it without words. The rain outside still fell. The storm still raged, and somewhere in the dark the creature with red eyes still searched. But inside this hidden chamber, something else had begun. Not just survival, but connection. The traveler knew the danger was far from over. He knew the choice he made would bring trouble, maybe even death. But he no longer felt the weight of regret. He felt something else instead. A strange calm, a quiet strength. The strength that comes only when one stops running from what is right. The boy lay back down beside his mother, his glowing skin faint like starlight in the dark. The traveler sat near them, hand resting on his pack. He listened to the sound of their breaths, and he whispered to himself, "I will see this through." The choice was made, and nothing would be the same again. The storm above raged through the night. Thunder rolled across the forest and rain hammered against the earth. But inside the hidden chamber, the world was quieter. The traveler sat against the cold stone wall, watching the boy and his mother rest. The faint glow of their skin was the only light in the darkness, soft and gentle like stars trapped beneath the ground. For the first time in many nights, the traveler did not think of his own hunger. He thought of theirs. He thought of the boy running through the storm, desperate, fearless, stealing only to save his mother. The memory burned inside him. It made him wonder if he would have done the same for someone he loved. He realized he did not know, and that unsettled him. Hours passed. The boy stirred awake, his glowing eyes blinking in the dimness. He sat up slowly, careful not to wake his mother. For a moment he only stared at the traveler, silent, unsure. Then with small hands he reached for the empty jar beside him. He held it out, shaking it gently. The message was clear. They needed water. The traveler nodded. He stood and picked up the jar. The boy pointed toward a narrow passage at the edge of the chamber, a tunnel of stone that sloped downward. Faint, trickles of water echoing within. The traveler hesitated. Was this another risk, another trap? But the boy's eyes held no trickery, only trust. Trust so strong it almost frightened him. He stepped into the tunnel, the jar in hand. The sound of dripping grew louder. At the end, he found a small underground spring. Clear water bubbled from the rock, cold and pure. He filled the jar and carried it back, careful not to spill. When he returned, the boy's eyes brightened. He rushed forward and took the jar with both hands. But before drinking, he turned to his mother first. He lifted her head gently, helping her sip. Only when she had finished did he drink himself. The traveler watched, silent. Something warm stirred in his chest. This was love in its purest form, a child putting his mother above all else. The boy then held the jar toward the traveler, offering it without a word. The traveler blinked, surprised. He had not expected to be included, but he accepted, drinking slowly, the cold water easing his dry throat. When he handed it back, the boy smiled faintly, a small smile, but real. And in that moment, the bond between them deepened. The woman's eyes opened weakly. She looked at the traveler, then at her son. Her lips moved, whispering words the traveler could not understand, but her tone was soft, kind. The boy translated only with his eyes. He touched his mother's hand, then pointed at the traveler. Then he placed his small hand on his own chest. The meaning was simple, friend. The traveler felt something shift inside him. He was no longer just a stranger who had followed a thief. He was part of something fragile, something that could break, with one wrong move, but also something that could grow stronger if cared for. They shared no common tongue, yet they shared food, water, silence, and small gestures of trust, and sometimes that was more powerful than words. The storm above began to fade. The pounding rain softened, thunder rolled farther away, but danger still lingered. The traveler remembered the red-eyed creature in the woods. It was not gone, only waiting, and when it returned, it would find them. He looked at the boy, at the woman. They were not strong enough to face such danger alone. And now, because of the bond forming between them, he knew he would not let them face it alone. The boy sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching. For the first time since the chase began, there was no fear in the child's eyes, only trust, only hope. The traveler closed his eyes, breathing deeply. The bond was sealed, and with it came a new weight, a weight he was willing to carry. The storm had faded, but the night was not calm. The rain slowed to a light drizzle, dripping from the forest canopy above. The air was heavy, carrying the smell of wet earth and broken branches. Deep in the chamber, the traveler sat awake while the boy and his mother rested. He could not sleep, his ears strained at every faint sound, every crack of a branch, every rush of wind through the trees. The memory of those red eyes haunted him. The creature had not gone far. He could feel it. It was out there still, waiting, searching, and sooner or later, it would find its way back. The boy stirred, his glowing eyes flickering open. He looked at the traveler, tilting his head, sensing the unease. The man only shook his head and pressed a finger to his lips. The boy nodded, but his small hands tightened around the jar, as if water alone could protect them. A sharp sound echoed from outside. The crunch of heavy steps on wet soil. The traveler froze. The boy tensed. Even the mother's weak breath seemed to catch in her throat. The sound came again, closer this time, slow and steady, not rushing, not hunting fast, but circling, patient. The traveler moved to the chamber's entrance, crouching low. Through the crack between roots and stone he saw faint movement. The trees swayed unnaturally, branches snapping as something large pressed through. Then, glowing in the dark, two burning eyes appeared. Red, sharp, and unblinking, the creature had returned. It was bigger than he remembered, a shadow with a body shaped like both beast and nightmare. Its shoulders hunched, claws dragging across the ground. Its breath came out in deep snarls, steaming in the cold air. The traveler's chest tightened. He had no weapon strong enough for such a thing. But if it found the boy and his mother, there would be no escape. The boy crept to his side, eyes wide with fear. He whispered something in his strange language. The traveler did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "We cannot fight this." The boy tugged on his arm, pointing deeper into another narrow passage. A second way out. A hidden exit. The traveler hesitated. If they ran, perhaps the beast would follow, but the mother could barely stand. She coughed weakly, struggling even to lift her head. The boy's face twisted with worry, torn between saving her or hiding. The traveler knew the decision could not rest on the child, it had to rest on him. The red eyes moved closer. A deep growl rattled the chamber walls. The traveler's hand went to his pack. Inside was a small lantern and a bit of oil, not a weapon strong enough to kill. But maybe, just maybe, it could distract. He pulled it out, striking a spark. The flame burst alive, bright against the dark. The creature snarled, its glowing eyes narrowing at the light. The traveler stepped forward, holding the lantern high. His shadow stretched tall and sharp across the chamber walls. He shouted, a deep roar, his voice echoing like thunder. The beast stopped, its claws digging into the soil. It hated the light. "Go," the traveler whispered to the boy, pointing toward the hidden path. The boy grabbed his mother's arm, struggling to pull her. Slowly, painfully, she rose, her weak body trembling. Together they moved toward the back passage. The traveler stayed behind, holding the light. Every second felt longer than hours. The beast growled louder, taking one step forward, then another. The lantern flame shook in the wind, threatening. To die, if it went out, they would all be lost. Finally, the boy's voice called from the tunnel. The sound was faint but urgent. The traveler stepped backward, keeping the flame between himself and the creature. Then, in one swift motion, he threw the lantern to the ground. The fire spread across the wet soil, hissing and smoking. The creature roared, pulling back, blinded by the sudden burst of light. The traveler turned and ran. The tunnel closed around him, the sound of fire and beast fading behind. He followed the boy's glow deeper into the earth. The danger was not gone, but for now they had escaped. The tunnel twisted downward, narrow and damp. The boy's glowing skin lit the way like a faint torch. Behind them, the traveler could still hear the beast's roar. It was angry, louder than before. The sound shook the stone walls. The mother stumbled, her weak body heavy in the boy's small arms. The traveler rushed to her side, lifting her gently, carrying her weight. She was light, far too light, her strength nearly gone. They hurried as fast as they could, but the tunnel began to widen, and with the wider space came danger. The beast was forcing its way in. The growls grew sharper, closer, its claws scraped stone, tearing the path open as it came. The boy cried out, his glowing eyes wide with fear. The traveler looked back and saw it. The red eyes burning brighter, the shadow filling the tunnel. There would be no outrunning it. Not with the mother, so weak, not with the boy slowing down. They needed time, and someone had to give it. The traveler stopped. "Keep going," he said firmly, though he knew the boy could not understand his words. But the boy understood the gesture. The man placed the mother into the child's arms, pointing forward. Then he stood tall, turning, to face the darkness behind. The boy shook his head, tears glowing in his eyes. He tried to pull the traveler's sleeve, tried to beg, but the man only gave a small, calm nod. A nod that said, "Trust me." Then he pushed the boy gently forward. The child hesitated one last moment before obeying, guiding his mother deeper into the tunnel. Their glow faded into the distance, leaving the traveler alone. The beast roared. Its massive head pushed through the tunnel, its claws ripping at stone. Its hot breath filled the air, sharp and foul. The traveler reached into his pack again. He had little left, only a small blade, a flask of oil, and fire. It would not be enough to kill such a monster, but maybe enough to slow it. He tore a strip from his cloak, soaked it in oil, and tied it to the blade. With a spark from his flint, the cloth caught fire. The flame burned bright, casting wild shadows on the walls. The beast howled, pulling back for an instant. The traveler's heart pounded. He knew this was his chance. He charged, the flaming blade in his hand. He swung it wide, sparks flying. The creature roared and lashed out, claws slicing the air. The traveler ducked, the heat of its breath burning his skin. He drove the blade forward, striking against its thick hide. The fire sizzled, the smell of scorched flesh filled the tunnel. The beast howled in rage, slamming him back against the wall. Pain shot through his body, but he did not let go. He pushed harder, keeping the flame close. Every second he held it back was another second for the boy and his mother to escape. The walls shook, stones falling from above. The tunnel began to crumble. The beast thrashed wildly. The traveler shouted, his voice echoing louder than thunder. He was not fighting to win. He was fighting to give hope. The boy's glow was gone now, far down the tunnel. That gave the traveler peace. They were far enough, safe for now. The beast lunged and the flame flickered low. The traveler braced himself, his last thought clear. They must live. The tunnel shook one final time as fire and shadow clashed. The beast roared, the traveler's cry joined it, and the world seemed to collapse around them. The tunnel trembled as dust rained from the ceiling. The boy stumbled forward, his mother leaning weakly on his arm. Behind them, the sound of roars and crashing stone echoed like a nightmare. The boy's glowing eyes filled with tears. He knew the man had stayed behind. He knew what that choice meant. The path grew narrower, curving upward until at last faint light appeared ahead. Moonlight, silver and soft, shining through cracks in the rocks. The boy pushed forward, pulling his mother step by step. At last they stumbled out into the forest clearing. The storm had passed. The sky was clear, stars glittering like a million distant fires. The mother sank to the ground, coughing. Her body shook, but she was alive. She looked at her son, her hand trembling as she touched his face. The boy turned his eyes back to the tunnel's mouth, dark and silent now. No flame, no sound of battle, only the whisper of the wind. For a long time they waited. Every rustle in the trees made the boy's heart leap. Every shadow made him hope the traveler would appear, but no one came. The boy pressed his forehead against the earth, his glowing tears falling into the soil. He whispered words his mother could barely hear, words of grief but also of gratitude. The woman pulled him close, her weak arms wrapping around his small frame. Her voice was soft. She spoke of honor, of sacrifice. Though the traveler was gone, his gift remained. Not just food, not just protection, but something greater. The reminder that kindness could exist even from a stranger, even from a different world. The boy listened, his heart heavy, but also burning with new strength. He remembered the bread the man had given, the water they had shared, the way the traveler had stood with fire in his hand, facing the beast without fear, all for them. When the mother finally rested again, her eyes closing in fragile sleep, the boy sat awake staring at the stars. They shimmered above, endless and cold, but now he did not feel alone. Somewhere, he believed, the traveler's spirit shone among them, a light stronger than darkness. Hours passed before the boy heard a sound, a faint crack in the trees. He rose quickly, hope filling his chest. But it was not the traveler. It was silence broken only by the forest's breath. Still, he stood tall. For the first time he did. Not feel only fear. He felt courage. The courage the traveler had given him. The night stretched on, and the first touch of dawn lit the sky. Golden rays painted the wet ground. The boy looked at his mother. Her breathing slow but steady. She would live. Because one man had chosen to care. The boy whispered a promise into the rising light, that he would never forget, that he would carry the fire of that human choice wherever he went, that one day, when he was strong, he would pass it on, the gift of compassion, the gift of courage. And so the story of a starving alien child did not end with theft. It did not end with hunger. It ended with hope. Hope born from a simple act of kindness. Hope that crossed the distance between worlds. Because when faced with fear and hunger, a human had chosen not to walk away. He had chosen to stay, to fight, to give. And in that choice, humanity proved its greatest strength. The stars above burned brighter as the sun rose. The boy looked once more at the tunnel, then lifted his gaze to the sky. His tears had dried. But the light in his eyes glowed stronger than ever, and so he whispered, "For you, I will live."